Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
All right, so you know how the ocean always holds this sense of mystery, like what's really down there in those depths? Well, today we're going to unpack a story that takes that mystery to a whole new level. We're talking about Captain George Bond, a Navy medical officer, and his ambitious quest to create underwater habitats, the Sealab experiments.
What's remarkable is that all this unfolded during the frenzy of the space race, yet Sealab remains largely unknown. It's a captivating but often overlooked chapter in the history of exploration.
Exactly. We've got this incredible article about the Navy's experimental underwater habitats, and it's filled with these unbelievable details. It's like a blend of science fiction and historical reality. So our deep dive today is to really understand this forgotten quest, the technology they use to make it happen, and believe it or not, how it connects to the space race A&D things happening today.
It makes you think about how human curiosity seems to have no bounds. We're driven to explore the most extreme environments, pushing the limits of what's possible, both in the vastness of space and the depths of the ocean.
It's like this unquenchable thirst for knowledge, right? And in this case, it all started with Captain George Bond. This guy was way ahead of his time. Picture this. It's the 1950s, everyone's obsessed with rockets and the moon, but Bond is captivated by the ocean. He truly believed it held the key to humanity's future, filled with untapped resources and endless possibilities.
It does make you wonder why the ocean, though. At the time, space exploration had a certain allure, a sense of glamour that underwater exploration just couldn't match.
Totally. Even President John F. Kennedy, in a 1963 address to the National Academy of Sciences, said, "To a surprising extent, the sea has remained a mystery. We know less about the oceans at our feet than the sky above our head." But, and here's the interesting part, Kennedy went on to say, knowledge of the oceans is more than a matter of curiosity. Our very survival may hinge upon it. He even called for more funding to support ocean research.
That's pretty significant coming from the president who championed the space race. It underscores the critical importance of understanding our own planet, not just looking outward to the stars.
Absolutely, and Bond was all in on this mission, but he faced a huge obstacle. Back then, diving technology was extremely limited. Using compressed air, divers could only stay underwater for about 30 minutes. Not exactly ideal for building underwater habitats, right?
That's where Bond's true brilliance comes in. He teamed up with Walt Mazone to develop a revolutionary diving technique called saturation diving.
Okay, here's where things get super interesting. Saturation diving works on the principle that if a diver breathes a special mix of gases at deep depths, their body will become saturated with those gases after about 24 hours. Once they hit that saturation point, the decompression time stays the same, whether they've been down there for days, weeks, or even months. It was a total game changer for underwater exploration.
Think of it as pre-adapting the human body to the extreme pressure of the deep sea. It's not without risks, of course, but it opened up a whole new world of possibilities for exploring and potentially living underwater.
So, with this breakthrough, Bond gets the green light from the Navy. In 1964, they construct Sealab Nersion, an underwater habitat placed 200 feet deep off the coast of Bermuda. And get this, 4 aquanauts, that's what they called the divers, lived in this thing for 10 days.
Sealab I was a resounding success, proving that Bond's concept of saturation diving actually worked. It paved the way for even more ambitious underwater missions.
They didn't waste any time either. Just a year later, they built Sealab II, a larger habitat submerged off the coast of La Jolla, California, and a depth of 205 feet. And this time, the experiment lasted for 45 days, with one team staying down there for a whole month.
What's striking is the contrast in funding. While NASA was receiving billions of dollars for the space program, Sealab operated on a relatively shoestring budget.
Yeah, it's amazing how they accomplished so much with limited resources. And speaking of connections to NASA, one of the aquanauts in Sealab II was none other than Scott Carpenter, the astronaut for Project Mercury.
Carpenter was a vocal advocate for underwater exploration. He genuinely believed that understanding the ocean was just as important as exploring space, even though it lacked the same public appeal. He once said, Work in the deep water is just not as glorious a pursuit in the minds of most people as a flight to the moon, for instance. It's a cold, dirty place, and you can't see very far. You can't go down and take pictures that thrill the world.
He definitely had a point about the public's perception, but Carpenter was determined to push the boundaries of what was possible underwater. So can you paint us a picture of what life is actually like inside Sealab?
Imagine a modest RV, but on the ocean floor. It had basic amenities: a shower, a toilet, a sink, a table, and of course shelves stocked with canned food.
But I'm guessing it wasn't exactly a luxury vacation rental. I read something about the breathing atmosphere having some pretty strange side effects.
Right. The atmosphere inside Sealab was rich in helium, which is necessary for saturation diving, but it had this peculiar effect on their voices. It made them sound high-pitched, almost like Donald Duck.
Wow, I can only imagine trying to have a serious conversation with that voice.
Actually, Carpenter embraced it. He even used his squeaky voice to entertain the crew by playing Goodnight Irene on the ukulele.
A ukulele concert on the ocean floor. That's incredible.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there were also some serious challenges.
Absolutely. Life in Sealab was inherently risky. Any error in the gas mixture could have been fatal. They frequently experienced headaches and earaches from the pressure. And then there are the inherent dangers of the deep sea itself.
Right. I remember reading about Carpenter getting stung by a venomous scorpion fish while he was outside the habitat. And on another occasion, his air supply kinked, forcing him to make a desperate swim back to Sealab.
These were incredibly brave individuals, willing to face those risks in the name of scientific discovery. Richard Blackie Blackburn, another Sealab aquanaut, described it this way: "None of this had ever been done before. We all felt like we were the lab rats, but we were all young, foolish, gung-ho, and thought we were invincible." They were true pioneers in every sense of the word.
It's amazing how these aquanauts persevered through so much. But their work in Sealab 6 led to some groundbreaking research, right?
Absolutely. The Sealab experiments provided invaluable data on the physiological and psychological effects of prolonged underwater living. It also allowed them to observe marine life in their natural habitat in a way that had never been done before.
It seems like Sealab 6 was a major triumph for underwater exploration. It must have felt like they were on the cusp of something truly groundbreaking.
They were. The success of Sealab 6 fueled even greater ambitions. By 1969, the Navy had constructed Sealab III, their most sophisticated and expensive habitat yet. They were determined to push the boundaries even further.
What were their goals for Sealab III?
Sealab III was designed to be submerged at a depth of over 600 feet off the coast of California. The mission was planned for 2 months, a significant increase in duration from the previous experiments.
That's a huge jump in depth compared to Sealab II. They were really entering uncharted territory.
They were. And as you can imagine, venturing into such depths brought a whole new set of challenges and risks. Unfortunately, Sealab III was plagued with problems from the very beginning. On February 15, 1969, as the crew began lowering the habitat to its designated depth of 610 feet, they discovered a critical issue. It was leaking its helium-rich atmosphere.
That sounds like a terrifying situation. A leak at that depth could have catastrophic consequences.
It was a critical situation. The pressure inside the habitat had to be meticulously maintained to prevent flooding. The Navy had to act quickly. They assembled a team of 4 experienced aquanauts and tasked them with the dangerous mission of repairing the leak.
So who were these brave individuals chosen for this high-stakes repair mission?
The team consisted of Bob Barth, Barry Cannon, John Reeves, and our friend Blackie Blackburn, who we discussed earlier. They were transported to Sealab III in a pressurized elevator called a Personnel Transfer Capsule, or PTC, designed specifically for moving between the surface and the habitat.
It sounds like they were facing immense pressure, both literally and figuratively.
They were. And as if the leak wasn't enough, another problem emerged. As soon as they entered the PTC, they realized the heating system was malfunctioning.
That's a serious problem, especially considering the effects of breathing helium mixtures.
Exactly. Breathing helium-rich mixtures makes you incredibly susceptible to the cold. It's actually about 10 times worse than breathing regular air.
I can't even imagine how cold they must have been.
Blackburn later recounted that the cold was so intense that their bodies were shaking uncontrollably. By the time they reached Sealab III, after a grueling hour-long descent, they were practically frozen.
What happened once they arrived at the habitat? Were they able to fix the leak?
Barth and Cannon, displaying incredible courage, exited the PTC and swam out to try and plug the leaks. Blackburn and Reeves remained inside the PTC, monitoring the situation from within. But just minutes later, a horrifying scream pierced through the intercom.
Oh no, what happened?
The Navy, who was monitoring the aquanauts through an underwater camera, witnessed Cannon struggling.
It sounds like a desperate situation. Were they able to get to him in time?
Blackburn, without hesitation, swam out to assist Cannon. He found him unconscious, floating near the habitat, with his mouthpiece out of his mouth.
Were they able to revive him?
They immediately brought Cannon back into the PTC, but tragically it was too late. He had passed away.
That's a heartbreaking loss. What were the findings of the Navy's investigation? What caused this tragedy?
The Navy conducted a thorough investigation, ultimately attributing Cannon's death to a faulty diving rig, and the diver responsible for its maintenance. However, many of the aquanauts, including Blackburn, disagreed with this conclusion. They believed that deeper systemic issues within the program contributed to the accident.
That's understandable. Such a tragic event would understandably raise questions about the safety protocols and overall management of the program. What was the impact of this tragedy on the future of Sealab?
The impact was profound and devastating. Shaken by the loss of life and grappling with mounting costs, the Navy made the difficult decision to cancel the entire Sealab program.
It's a tragedy on multiple levels. Not only the loss of a skilled aquanaut, but also the termination of a program that held so much promise for underwater exploration and scientific discovery. It feels like a significant setback for the field.
It was a major setback for Bond's vision of establishing permanent underwater communities. However, even though Sealab was cut short, it wasn't a complete failure. The program yielded invaluable knowledge and experience that continued to benefit both military and civilian sectors.
Can you give us some examples of how the legacy of Sealab lived on?
During the Cold War, the Navy utilized saturation diving techniques developed in Sealab to tap into Soviet underwater communication cables. This provided them with critical intelligence during a time of heightened tension.
So even though the program ended, the techniques and knowledge developed during Sealab continued to play a vital role in national security. What about civilian applications? Did Sealab have any impact there?
Absolutely. The oil industry adopted saturation diving for deep-sea drilling operations, and it's still widely used today in offshore oil and gas exploration. The techniques pioneered in Sealab became essential for accessing resources in increasingly challenging underwater environments.
That's a testament to the lasting impact of Sealab. Even though the program itself ended, the knowledge gained continued to shape and advance other industries.
Are there any examples of Sealab's influence in scientific research today?
Yes, in fact, there are. The Aquarius Roof Base, an underwater habitat located off the coast of Florida, utilizes saturation diving to enable scientists to live and work underwater for extended periods, conducting research on coral reefs and other marine ecosystems.
That's fascinating. So even though Sealab might be a forgotten chapter in the history of exploration, its legacy continues to inspire and influence scientific research today.
Precisely. While Sealab may not be a household name, its contributions to our understanding of the ocean and the development of underwater technology are undeniable. Now, before we move on, I have to ask you about something I found in the article. It mentions something called dolphin mail. Apparently, it involved a bottlenose dolphin named Tuffy. This sounds intriguing, to say the least. Dolphin mail. I have to admit, that sounds a bit out there, even for Sealab. What exactly was the Navy doing training dolphins to deliver mail underwater?
Well, it's important to remember that the Sealab experiments were all about pushing the boundaries of what was possible in terms of living and working underwater.
Yeah.
And communication was a major challenge they were trying to overcome.
So they thought, why not a dolphin? It's definitely creative, but was it really necessary, or was it more of a publicity stunt?
Tuffy's role was actually quite practical. He was trained to carry messages in small packages from the surface down to the habitat. It turned out he was remarkably efficient. They even have these commemorative envelopes called dolphin mail that were actually delivered by Tuffy during Sealab II. It's a fascinating little footnote in the history of the project.
Okay, I have to give them credit for thinking outside the box. But honestly, I'm more interested in what happened to the aquanauts themselves, the human side of this story. Where did life take them after the Sealab program came to an end?
Many of the aquanauts, like Blackie Blackburn, went on to apply their saturation diving expertise in the burgeoning offshore oil industry. They played a key role in developing deep-sea drilling operations, which became increasingly important for accessing energy resources.
So even though the Navy abandoned Sealab, the skills and experience gained by the aquanauts continued to be valuable assets in other fields. It speaks to the ripple effect of these kinds of ambitious endeavors.
It does. And even today, Underwater habitats like the Aquarius Reef Base are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in terms of underwater research and exploration. They are, in a sense, carrying the torch that was first lit by Sealab.
It's amazing to think that Captain Bond's vision, while tragically cut short, continues to have such a lasting impact. It makes you wonder what could have been achieved if Sealab had been allowed to continue.
It's a testament to the enduring power of human curiosity and our relentless pursuit of knowledge, even in the face of adversity and setbacks.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the history of Sealab, what are the key takeaways? What can we learn from this remarkable chapter in underwater exploration?
For me, it highlights the importance of bold, ambitious thinking and the willingness to take risks in the pursuit of scientific discovery. Sealab showed us what's possible when we push the boundaries of our understanding and embrace the unknown.
It also underscores the importance of learning from both our successes and our failures. While the Sealab third tragedy was a devastating setback, the knowledge and experience gained from the program as a whole continue to inform and inspire underwater exploration today.
And perhaps most importantly, it raises profound questions about our relationship with the ocean. As we face growing challenges on land, will we eventually turn to the ocean for new solutions, for resources, and perhaps even for new ways of living? Can we learn from the lessons of Sealab to ensure that future underwater endeavors are both safe and sustainable?
Those are big questions that deserve careful consideration. As we continue to explore the ocean depths, we must do so responsibly and with a deep respect for the delicate balance of this incredible ecosystem.
Exactly. The ocean holds vast potential, but it's up to us to unlock that potential in a way that benefits both humanity and the planet as a whole.
It's a reminder that we still have so much to learn and explore right here on our own planet. Perhaps someday underwater habitats like Sealab will become a reality, not just a footnote in history.
Perhaps. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries that surround us.
And on that note, we'll surface from this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.